Tom was a quiet man who lived far from the busy city. His house sat on the edge of a small town, surrounded by tall trees and wild grass. It was not a fancy home, but it was his. The house belonged to his family for many years. Tom's grandfather had worked hard to buy the land, and Tom loved it very much. His land was big and wild. The grass grew high, and flowers bloomed everywhere. Birds sang in the trees, and a small stream ran along one side. Tom liked the peace and calm of his home. He didn't care much for the noisy world beyond his trees. Every morning, Tom took a walk around his land. He watched the sunlight touch the leaves and felt the cool wind on his face. This was his favorite part of the day. It made him feel free and happy. One sunny morning, Tom went to check his mailbox. He expected a few letters or bills, but what he found surprised him. There was a big white envelope with the words Meadow Hills Homeowners Association written on it. Tom didn't know what that meant. He lived near a small neighborhood called Meadow Hills, but he wasn't part of it. Or so he thought. Tom opened the envelope slowly. Inside was a letter with many words and numbers. His eyes moved over the paper again and again. Then he stopped. The letter said that he owed $150,000 in fines. The fines were because of violations on his land. Tom's heart began to beat faster. He read the letter again to make sure he was not wrong. It said, violation of landscaping codes. Failure to remove unauthorized structures. Non-compliance with community rules. Tom frowned. He didn't understand. What was this letter about? He looked outside. His land looked just like it always had: wild grass, trees, and a small shed his grandfather had built years ago. There was nothing new or wrong. He thought hard. I don't belong to that neighborhood, he said to himself quietly. Why are they sending me this? Tom put the letter down on his kitchen table. His hands shook a little. He did not want to believe it. This must be a mistake. Maybe the mailman put the letter in the wrong box. He picked up the phone and called the number on the letter. A woman answered. Her name was Claire, and she said she worked for the Meadow Hills Homeowners Association, also called HOA. Claire told Tom that the HOA was in charge of the whole neighborhood. She said, your land is part of Meadow Hills now. We have new maps that show your property inside the neighborhood. Tom was shocked. No one told me this, he said. Claire replied calmly, we put a notice in the community newsletter last month. If you had read it, you would know. Tom did not remember any newsletter. He felt confused and a little angry. I don't think this is right. I live on my land, but I never agreed to join your association. I have never signed any papers. Claire smiled, but Tom could tell it was a cold smile. When a new area is developed, the land is divided and given to the HOA. You are part of it now, whether you like it or not. You must follow our rules. Tom shook his head. But this is my land. My family owns it. It's not part of any neighborhood. Claire's smile grew smaller. I'm sorry, Tom. But the fines are real. If you don't pay, the HOA will put a lien on your property. That means you could lose your land. Tom felt a heavy weight in his chest. He had never felt so small before. This can't be happening, he whispered. After the call, Tom sat in his chair, staring out the window. His mind was full of questions. How could the HOA say they owned his land? How could they fine him such a large amount of money? What would happen if he didn't pay? He looked at the wild grass outside and thought about his grandfather. How proud his grandfather would have been of this land. How hard he worked to keep it safe. Tom knew he had to do something. He could not let the HOA take away his home without a fight. But he didn't know where to start. As the sun began to set, Tom made a decision. He would visit the town office the next day. He would find out who really owned the land. He would look at the old papers, the deeds, and the maps. Maybe there was a mistake. Maybe there was hope. For the first time in many years, Tom felt a spark of courage. The road ahead looked difficult, but he was ready to walk it. He stood up, took a deep breath, and whispered to himself, "I will find the truth." And with that, the quiet man who lived at the edge of the woods began a journey that would change everything he thought he knew about his land and about the neighborhood called Meadow Hills. The morning sun rose bright and warm as Tom stepped out of his house, his heart still heavy from the letter and phone call. He tried to calm himself with the familiar sounds of birds singing and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. But the weight of the situation pressed down on him like a thick cloud. As he walked around his land, he thought about the HOA, the Meadow Hills Homeowners Association. He had never cared much about the small neighborhood down the road, except to admire its clean streets and tidy houses. He liked to keep his land wild and free, untouched by rules or fences. Now, those same people were telling him his land belonged to them. And worse, they were demanding $150,000 in fines. Tom felt a mix of confusion and anger. How could they do this? Who gave them the right? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden knock on the front door. Tom froze. He wasn't expecting visitors. He opened the door slowly. Standing there were three people, all dressed neatly in polos and slacks. They looked official, clipboards in hand, papers ready. One of them, a woman with short hair and sharp eyes, smiled politely. "Hello, Tom. I'm Claire. I'm the chair of the Meadow Hills HOA. These are my colleagues, Mark and Susan." Tom stepped back and gestured for them to come inside. His mind raced with questions. Why had they come here in person? What did they want? Claire spoke first. "We're here to talk about the violations on your property." Tom shook his head. "I don't understand. I live here. This is my land. What violations?" Claire flipped through her papers. "According to the HOA records, your land is part of Meadow Hills. The landscaping doesn't meet our community standards. The small shed on your land has not been approved, and the wild grass is over the limit set by the HOA rules." Tom's eyes narrowed. "That shed has been there for over 20 years. My grandfather built it with his own hands. The grass is part of the natural beauty here." Claire nodded slowly. "I understand your feelings, but the HOA rules are clear. You are required to maintain your property according to the standards we set for the neighborhood." Tom crossed his arms. "I never agreed to be part of your neighborhood. No one ever asked me." Claire's polite smile disappeared. "Tom, your land is on the official Meadow Hills map. The county records show your property inside our boundaries. You are part of the HOA, whether you like it or not." Tom's heart sank. This felt wrong. There had to be a mistake. He looked at Claire and the others. "Is there a way to talk about this? To fix it?" Claire glanced at her clipboard. "There is a process. You can appeal the fines, but you must pay them first or the HOA will put a lien on your property." Tom's voice was low but steady. "What happens if you place a lien?" "That means the HOA can take legal steps to claim your land," Claire said. "It's serious, Tom." Tom felt the room close in around him. He thought about losing the land his family had worked so hard to keep. But something inside him stayed calm. "I want to see the official records," Tom said firmly. "I need to know who really owns this land." Claire hesitated, then said, "You can visit the county records office. But the HOA records are correct." Tom nodded slowly. "Thank you." The three visitors left soon after, their steps firm and confident. Tom closed the door and leaned against it, feeling tired but determined. He looked out at the wild grass, the tall trees, and the small stream winding through his land. "This is my home," he whispered. "And I will find out the truth." The next morning, Tom drove to the town's county records office. The building was old but well kept, with large wooden doors and polished floors. Inside, the air smelled of paper and dust. He walked up to the front desk and spoke to the clerk, a friendly man named Mr. Lewis. "I want to see the land records for Meadow Hills," Tom said. Mr. Lewis smiled kindly. "That's a big job. What exactly are you looking for?" Tom hesitated, then said, "I want to know who owns the land, the whole neighborhood, if possible." Mr. Lewis nodded. "You're looking for the deeds and maps. I'll help you." He led Tom to a quiet room filled with shelves of old books and binders. Tom sat at a large wooden table and opened the first binder. Inside were maps of Meadow Hills, with colored lines marking the land plots. He saw the neat rows of houses and streets, but then his eyes caught something. His land was shown as part of the neighborhood. But something else was strange. Next to the map, a faded note was written in small letters. Tom leaned closer and read, "Original land leased under 99-year conditional agreement. Ownership remains with the original landowner's family unless formally transferred." His heart skipped a beat. Could this mean that the HOA didn't really own the land? Tom spent hours poring over the documents. Old deeds, contracts, maps, and handwritten notes. The papers were yellowed and brittle, but they told a story. The land where Meadow Hills was built was not sold. It was leased by a man named Henry, Tom's grandfather, many years ago. The lease had strict rules. The land could not be sold or transferred without the family's permission. Tom felt a sudden surge of hope. He closed the books and stood up, feeling the weight of the discovery. Outside, the sun was low in the sky, painting the town in warm colors. Tom smiled quietly to himself. Maybe the fight was not over. Maybe, just maybe, the land was still his. And with that thought, Tom began to plan his next steps. Tom felt a mix of hope and nervousness as he walked out of the county records office. The papers he had seen inside held secrets he never knew about. His grandfather, Henry, had not sold the land. He had only leased it under very special conditions. The papers showed that the family still owned the land beneath the neighborhood. This was the truth that no one had told him. Tom sat on a bench outside, staring at the worn documents in his hands. The sun was warm, but he felt cold inside. So many years had passed. So many people had assumed the land belonged to the HOA or the builders. But now, with these papers, Tom knew he had to act carefully. He remembered the letter from the HOA demanding $150,000 in fines. That number was huge. But what was more important was that the HOA had no right to fine him if the land was still his family's. Tom thought about Claire and the others from the HOA. They seemed so sure of themselves, so confident. But confidence did not always mean the truth. Tom decided he needed help. He wasn't a lawyer, and reading old legal papers was confusing. The lease agreements used strange words he barely understood. But he knew one thing: he had to protect his land. Back at home, Tom spread the papers across his kitchen table. The lease agreement was long and full of complicated terms, but one part stood out. The land leased under this agreement shall remain the property of the original owner's family unless a formal sale is agreed upon by all parties. No sale had ever happened. No one from the HOA had proof they owned the land. This meant that the neighborhood had been built on land that technically belonged to Tom's family. Tom's mind raced. How could he explain this? How could he show these papers to people who already believed the land was theirs? Then, an idea came to him. He would speak to a professional. A lawyer. The next day, Tom found a small law office downtown. The lawyer, Mr. Harris, was a calm man with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Tom showed him the papers and told him everything. Mr. Harris listened carefully, nodding as Tom spoke. When Tom finished, the lawyer took a deep breath. "This is a very interesting case," Mr. Harris said. "If these papers are real and still valid, they could prove you own the land." "But how?" Tom asked. "We will need to check the records more carefully and confirm the lease's validity," Mr. Harris said. "If it is still active, the HOA's authority over your land is not legal." Tom felt a new wave of hope. "What should I do next?" "First," Mr. Harris said, "we send a formal letter to the HOA, explaining the situation. We ask them to stop all fines and enforcement. Then we negotiate." Tom nodded, feeling more confident. A few days later, Tom prepared the letter with Mr. Harris's help. The letter was clear and calm, not angry or rude. It explained the lease, the documents, and Tom's rights. Tom took the letter to the post office and sent it to the Meadow Hills HOA office. After sending the letter, Tom waited. Days passed slowly. Then, one afternoon, there was a knock at his door. Tom opened it and saw Claire standing there, alone this time. Her face was serious, but she didn't look angry. "We received your letter," Claire said. Tom nodded. "Yes. I hope we can talk about this." Claire looked around, then said, "The HOA board wants to meet with you. They want to understand what you are saying." Tom felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. "When?" "Tomorrow evening, at the community center." Tom agreed. That night, Tom could hardly sleep. He thought about the meeting. Would they listen? Would they accept the truth? The next day, Tom dressed carefully and drove to the community center. Inside, the room was full of people, neighbors, HOA members, and Claire. Tom carried his folder of papers, his proof. The meeting began with Claire speaking first. "We received Mr. Tom's letter," she said. "It claims that he owns the land that Meadow Hills is built on. This is a serious claim, and the board wants to hear more." Tom stood and explained what he had found in the county records. He showed the lease agreement and maps. Some people in the room whispered and looked surprised. Claire cleared her throat and said, "This is unexpected. We did not know about this lease." Tom took a deep breath. "I want to be fair. I am not trying to cause trouble. I only want my rights respected." One older woman raised her hand. "If this is true, what happens to us? We built our homes here." Tom understood her fear. He looked at the neighbors and said, "I don't want to take anything from anyone. I only want to live on my land peacefully." The room was quiet. Claire finally said, "We need time to review all this. The board will meet again next week." Tom nodded. "Thank you." After the meeting, Tom walked home slowly. His heart was heavy but hopeful. The truth was out, but many questions remained. For the first time in a long time, Tom felt he was not alone. Some neighbors were curious, others worried, but no one could ignore the facts. Tom looked at his land through the window and whispered, "This is my home. And now, they know." He sat down and began to plan for the days ahead. The fight for his land was just beginning. After the meeting at the community center, Tom returned home feeling a strange mix of hope and worry. The neighbors had listened quietly, some looked surprised, others confused. The HOA board seemed unsure how to respond. But one thing was clear, no one was ready to give up on what they believed was their neighborhood. That evening, Tom sat at his kitchen table once again, studying the lease papers. The words were difficult to understand at first. Legal papers often were. But Tom was determined to know every detail. He read the lease slowly, line by line. Then he found something hidden deep in the middle of the long document. A clause. A special rule written many years ago. It said, "The land leased under this agreement shall remain the property of the original owner's family. The lease is conditional and shall last for 99 years. The lessee may use the land, but cannot transfer ownership or sell the property without written consent from the original landowner's heirs." Tom's eyes widened. This was the key. The neighborhood had been built on land that was only leased to the builders, not sold. The builders and the HOA did not own the land. They only had permission to use it for a certain time. Tom felt a surge of pride and strength. This was his family's land. His grandfather had made sure that no one could take it away completely. Tom leaned back in his chair, thinking about what this meant. If the HOA tried to fine him or force him to follow their rules, they were wrong. They had no right to control the land. This hidden clause gave Tom power he never imagined. But power also brought responsibility. Tom knew he had to be careful. He could not act recklessly. He needed to understand everything fully. The next morning, Tom went back to the county records office. He asked Mr. Lewis, the clerk, if there were any other documents related to the lease. Mr. Lewis nodded and brought out more papers from a locked cabinet. "Some of these are older letters and agreements," he explained. "They might help you understand the full story." Tom took the papers and studied them. He found letters from the original builder, who had agreed to the lease conditions. There were also notes from Henry, Tom's grandfather, making sure the family's rights were protected. One letter stood out. It was from Henry himself, written shortly before he passed away. In the letter, Henry warned the builder that the lease could be ended if the terms were broken. Tom's hands trembled as he read. His grandfather had fought hard to keep the land safe. Tom felt a deep connection to the past, and a new determination to protect the future. Later that week, Tom returned home and decided to write a clear letter to the HOA board. He wanted to explain the truth calmly and clearly. He wrote, "Dear Meadow Hills Homeowners Association, after careful review of the land records and lease agreements, I want to clarify that the land on which Meadow Hills is built is leased under a 99-year agreement. The ownership remains with my family, the original landowners. The HOA's authority to enforce rules or collect fines on this land is therefore invalid. I ask the HOA to stop all fines and enforcement actions against my property. I am open to meeting with the board to discuss how we can move forward peacefully. Thank you for your attention." Tom. He sent the letter by certified mail, making sure it was delivered. Then, he waited. Days passed slowly. Tom's phone rang only a few times, mostly from friends asking how he was doing. But one afternoon, an unexpected message arrived. It was from Claire. She asked Tom to meet with her and the HOA board again. This time, the tone of the message was different. Less formal. More serious. Tom agreed. The next evening, he returned to the community center. The room was quieter than before. The mood felt tense. Claire greeted Tom without her usual smile. "We have reviewed your documents," she said. "It seems you are correct. The lease and the ownership rights belong to your family." Tom felt a small relief. Claire continued, "But this is complicated. Many families live here now. They bought their homes, not knowing this truth." Tom nodded. "I understand. I don't want to cause problems for anyone." Claire looked at him carefully. "The HOA wants to find a way to work with you. To respect your rights and help the neighborhood." Tom smiled gently. "I want that too. I want to protect my land, but I also want peace." The board agreed to meet again to discuss a plan. As Tom walked home that night, he felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. He thought about his grandfather's vision, the care taken to protect the land, the quiet hope that the family's home would remain safe. Tom knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be more meetings, more questions, and maybe even more challenges. But now, he held the truth in his hands. And with the hidden clause, he held the power to protect what was his. Looking up at the stars, Tom whispered, "This land is our home. And I will keep it safe." After the second meeting with the HOA board, Tom felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. The board members had admitted that the lease was real and that the land belonged to his family, but they also reminded him of one difficult fact: many families had built their homes on this land without knowing the truth. Tom understood their concern. He didn't want to upset his neighbors or cause trouble for the people who had made Meadow Hills their home. But at the same time, he couldn't ignore his family's rights. Over the next few days, Tom noticed a change in the neighborhood. Some neighbors began to look at him differently. They whispered behind his back or stared when he walked by. A few even avoided him completely. Tom felt lonely. He hadn't expected this. He had hoped that once the truth was out, people would understand. Instead, there was fear and suspicion. One afternoon, as Tom was walking near the edge of his land, a woman from the neighborhood approached him. Her name was Maria. She had lived in Meadow Hills for 10 years and had 2 children. "Tom," she said softly, "I want to talk to you." Tom nodded, surprised but willing. Maria looked worried. "I know you want to protect your land, and I respect that. But some of us are scared. We bought our homes here, and now we're not sure what will happen." Tom listened carefully. "I don't want to take anything away from you or your family," he said gently. "I want to find a way for us all to live peacefully." Maria sighed. "It's hard. The HOA talks about fines and rules, and now this lease. Some neighbors think you want to kick us out." Tom shook his head. "That's not true. I just want my rights respected. We can find a solution together." Maria smiled faintly. "I hope so." That evening, Tom sat alone in his living room. He thought about Maria's words and the fear in the neighborhood. He realized that he had been so focused on proving his ownership that he had not thought enough about the people living there now. Tom wanted to reach out. He wanted to show kindness and understanding. The next morning, he decided to visit his neighbors one by one. He would listen to their concerns and share his own story. Tom began with Mrs. Green, an elderly woman who lived across the street. She welcomed him warmly and listened as he explained the lease and his family's history with the land. "I never knew any of this," she said. It's a lot to take in. Tom nodded. I'm sorry if this has caused worry. I want us to work together. Mrs. Green smiled. I believe you. Thank you for coming. Next, Tom visited Mr. Patel, who owned a small bakery in the neighborhood. Mr. Patel was busy, but he took a moment to talk. This is new to me, he said. But I think it's important to be honest. Tom felt grateful. Thank you. By the end of the day, Tom had spoken to many neighbors. Some were still unsure, but most appreciated his honesty and effort. Tom realized that truth alone was not enough. Trust had to be built. Meanwhile, the HOA board continued to discuss the situation. They knew the lease gave Tom strong rights, but they also had to protect the interests of the many families living in Meadow Hills. Claire, the HOA chairwoman, suggested a meeting with a mediator, a neutral person who could help both sides talk and find a solution. The board agreed, and a mediator named Mr. Collins was invited to the next meeting. At the community center, the room was filled with neighbors, board members, and Tom. Mr. Collins stood at the front. Thank you all for coming, he began. Our goal today is to listen and understand. We want to find a way for this community to move forward together. Tom felt nervous but hopeful. One by one, neighbors shared their feelings. Some expressed fear about losing their homes. Others spoke about confusion and anger. Tom listened carefully, speaking calmly when it was his turn. I understand your fears, he said. I want to protect my land, but I don't want to harm this community. I believe we can find a way to respect everyone's rights. Mr. Collins nodded. That is a good start. Let's work together to find solutions. Over the next few weeks, Tom, the HOA board, and the neighbors met several times with Mr. Collins. They discussed ideas like creating a special agreement that recognized Tom's ownership while protecting homeowners' rights, offering compensation or legal support for families who might be affected, improving communication between the HOA and residents. Tom found himself surprised by the kindness and openness in the meetings. People wanted to find peace, not fight. One afternoon, Maria came to Tom's door with a small basket of fruit. I just want to say thank you, she said. You listened to us. That means a lot. Tom smiled. Thank you for trusting me. As the sun set over Meadow Hills, Tom looked out at his land, the wild grass, the tall trees, and the homes nearby. He felt a deep sense of hope. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he knew he was not alone. The land was his family's, yes, but it was also part of a community. Tom whispered to himself, we will find a way. Days turned into weeks, and the conversations between Tom, the HOA, and the neighbors continued. The meetings with the mediator, Mr. Collins, brought everyone closer to understanding each other's fears and hopes. Tom realized that the fight for his land was not just about property or money. It was about people, families who had built their lives here, and a history that needed respect. One morning, Tom received a call from Claire, the HOA chairwoman. Her voice was calm but serious. Tom, the board has a proposal. They want to create a legal agreement that recognizes your family's ownership but also protects the homeowners. Would you be willing to discuss it? Tom smiled quietly. Yes, I want that. They arranged a meeting for the following evening at the community center. When Tom arrived, he saw many familiar faces, neighbors, board members, and even Maria and Mrs. Green. The atmosphere was hopeful but tense. Claire began, the board has worked with lawyers to draft a proposal. It respects Tom's ownership rights and offers protections for all homeowners. She handed out copies of the agreement. Tom scanned the pages carefully. The agreement said, Tom's family would be officially recognized as the landowner. Homeowners would receive long-term leases with the right to live and sell their homes. The HOA's authority would be adjusted to respect Tom's ownership. A fund would be created to help residents if any legal issues arose. Both sides would agree to regular communication and cooperation. Tom looked up. This is fair. It protects my family and the neighbors. Maria nodded. It shows respect and care for all of us. The next days were busy. Tom and the HOA worked with their lawyers to finalize the agreement. The neighbors were invited to ask questions and express concerns. Some questions were difficult. What happens if someone breaks the lease? Asked a young man named Daniel. Claire answered, the agreement includes rules, but it focuses on helping people solve problems, not punishment. Another neighbor asked, will this affect our property values? Mr. Harris, Tom's lawyer, explained, the agreement aims to protect values by clarifying ownership and rights. Slowly, people began to understand. The fears started to lessen. One afternoon, Tom received a visit from his cousin, David, who lived in another town. David had heard about the situation and wanted to support Tom. I'm proud of you, David said. Your family history is important, and you handled this well. Tom smiled. Thanks, David. It's been hard, but I'm glad it's moving toward peace. David looked around. Do you think the neighborhood will be okay? Tom nodded. Yes. We're building something new. Trust. As the weeks passed, Tom found himself more involved in the community. He helped organize clean-up days for the park and started a small garden project. Neighbors joined, laughing and working together. Maria brought homemade cookies, and Mrs. Green shared stories about the town's history. Tom felt a warmth he hadn't known before. His land was no longer just a place to protect, it was a home for many. One evening, after a successful meeting where the agreement was signed by all parties, Tom stood outside his house, watching the sun set. Claire approached him quietly. Thank you, Tom, she said. You showed strength and kindness. Meadow Hills is stronger because of you. Tom nodded. Thank you, Claire. It was never about fighting. It was about understanding. Claire smiled. Exactly. That night, Tom sat by the window, looking at the stars above his land. He thought about his grandfather, Henry, who had carefully protected this place years ago. Tom whispered, we kept our promise, Grandpa. This land is safe. He felt peace. The story of the land, the lease, and the neighborhood had been difficult, but it had brought people together. Tom learned that even when things seem broken, respect and kindness can build new beginnings. And in the heart of Meadow Hills, life went on stronger, connected, and hopeful. The weeks after the agreement was signed were full of new energy in Meadow Hills. The worries and tensions that had shadowed the neighborhood began to fade. Tom felt a lightness in his heart he hadn't known for a long time. The land that once felt like a battleground now felt like home again. One Saturday morning, Tom walked around the neighborhood. The air was fresh, filled with the sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting. It was a bright day, and the sun warmed his face. Tom smiled as he passed the small garden he had helped start. Neighbors were working there, planting flowers and vegetables. Maria waved at him from across the street, holding a basket of freshly baked bread. Good morning, Tom, she called. Morning, Maria. Tom replied. He stopped for a moment to talk. The garden looks great. Maria nodded. It's becoming a place for all of us. I'm glad you started it. Tom felt proud. This was more than just land, it was a community growing stronger. That afternoon, Tom received an invitation to a neighborhood gathering. The HOA had planned a picnic in the park to celebrate the new agreement and the fresh start. Tom arrived at the park, carrying a dish of homemade salad. Families were spread out on blankets, children ran around laughing, and the smell of grilled food filled the air. Claire greeted Tom with a warm smile. We wanted to say thank you for everything you've done, she said. This picnic is a sign of new friendship. Tom nodded. I'm grateful, Claire. It's good to see everyone happy. The neighbors gathered around, sharing stories, food, and laughter. The past worries seemed far away. As the sun began to set, Tom stood quietly by a large oak tree, watching the sky change colors. His phone buzzed. It was a message from Mr. Harris, his lawyer. Congratulations, Tom. The legal process is complete. Your family's ownership is now officially recorded. The neighborhood's leases are secure. Tom felt a wave of relief and joy. The long battle was over. The truth was recognized. Peace was restored. Later that evening, Tom sat on his porch, thinking about everything that had happened. He remembered the first letter from the HOA demanding $150,000 in fines. It felt like a distant nightmare now. But through patience, honesty, and respect, Tom had turned the situation around. He thought about his grandfather, Henry, who had worked so hard to protect the land. Tom whispered, "We did it, Grandpa. Your dreams live on." A soft breeze rustled the leaves above, and Tom felt a quiet happiness settle inside him. The next day, Tom went for a walk to the edge of his land. He looked out over the neighborhood, the houses, the streets, and the people living there. He realized something important: land was more than just soil and boundaries. It was about people, memories, and home. Tom smiled. This is where we all belong. In the weeks that followed, Tom continued to build relationships with his neighbors. He helped organize community events, repaired old fences, and worked on new projects to improve the neighborhood. The HOA also changed. With clearer communication and respect for the land's ownership, the community felt stronger and safer. Claire and Tom often talked, planning ways to keep Meadow Hills peaceful and connected. One sunny afternoon, Maria came to Tom's door. "I have an idea," she said. "What if we start a small library in the community center? A place for everyone to share books and stories." Tom's eyes lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. Let's do it." Together, they began to gather books, volunteers, and support. The small library became another symbol of the neighborhood's new beginning. Months passed. The story of the $150,000 fine, the hidden lease, and the ownership dispute became a tale neighbors shared with visitors, a story of truth, courage, and community. Tom never imagined that his discovery would lead to so much change. But now, as he looked at Meadow Hills, he knew it was the right journey. One evening, Tom sat by his window, watching the stars. He thought about the future, hopeful and bright. He whispered softly, "This land is home. Our home. And together, we will keep it safe and full of life."